together from so many churches on a Saturday morning for kind of a challenging topic. This is fun. And Gordon and I'm sure Gordon and I, one of the things I love when I speak is questions, because that's when you hear how people are thinking, and it's very helpful. So thank you for being here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here. I am Doug Axe. I'm a professor of biology at Biola University. Did I put Biola up there? Yeah. So been there for 7 years. My wife and I met down here in Southern California. I grew up in the Bay Area. We went and spent 14 years in England and then 15 years in Seattle, where Gordon is now. Go Hawks. And that controversial statement, okay. And I'm loving it being at Biola. One of the things that the Lord called me to do after calling me to write books and publish papers is just to pour into people more intentionally. And being a professor has been an opportunity to do that. So I've absolutely loved that. So kind of pivoting from what AI is, what's under the hood when you look at it, demystifying it. We're going to focus now on something that's more personal, connects to us, and maybe more spiritual as well, of man and machine. And we're going to be talking about personhood. And I'm going to go through kind of I'm going to give you the bullet points of what I'm going to cover, and then we'll just start covering it. So the first thing I want to look at is you should notice, if you work with AIs to any extent, if that is a person behind this, it is a problematic, it's a strange person, okay? Because the persons that we know do not act the way AIs act. And as Gordon said, basically a large language model is a what word should come next algorithm. It's not thinking at all. It's just it's been trained to turn a crank, and if you give it words, it's going to spit out the next words according to probabilistic structure. And you've known of this for a long time, because your phone, when you type text messages for a long time, you're typing along and it's offering your next word. And I don't know if you've noticed, as I've noticed, sometimes it feels like there's a bias, or sometimes it's offering you a stupid word. And sometimes it seems biased. So I typed in, it was a wonderful worship night. I felt the presence of the capital H, holy, capital S-P-I, and it's giving me spit. And I'm thinking, dude, that does not belong there. And you're avoiding the word that you know goes there. Humans don't operate that way. When we're speaking, we're not like, a word. We have an idea, and then we're cashing it out in words. Most humans. I hope this works.
Sometimes I'll start a sentence, and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way.
Okay.
Like an improv conversation. Improvisation.
Yeah, okay, most humans. I was expecting that to come out speakers, but Michael Scott is an anomaly in that regard. So that's exactly what an AI is. Sometimes I start a sentence, and I have no idea where it's going. Okay, I just hope to find it along the way. That is literally what a large language model is doing, and sometimes it does find it. Okay, next we're going to look at the source of human personhood. And next, I'm going to give a simple description of the human person. What is a person? We think so naturally about personhood because we are persons, but sometimes we need to pause and say, well, what exactly is a person? What distinguishes a person from something that isn't a person? Then I'm going to look at the potency briefly of personhood. This won't take as long as it looks like here. And then the fake danger, AIs becoming like us. And you'll hear people saying that's going to happen. They're going to surpass us. I'm going to show you, I'm going to prove to you that can't happen. I'm not saying, it's at least 20 years off. I'm saying never, it won't happen. I'm going to show you why it will never happen. And then the real danger is what I'll call personhood atrophy. The fact that AIs are capable enough in certain things that we who are persons are relinquishing aspects of our personhood because we've built bad habits by using AIs. And that is a real danger, and that is happening right now. So let's start with this. Something is very wrong with this person. And what I mean by this is the persons that you know of, human persons, they come in varying degrees of intellect. There are people who don't know a whole lot. There are people who aren't very conversant. There are people who are brilliant. There are people who are wise, and there are people who are less wise, but there's a consistency to that. So if you know someone who is very learned, scholarly, and wise, you learn to trust that person. And they will answer things in dialogue in a certain way, and you learn to have confidence in it, because that's how persons behave. And AI is not like that at all. An AI will say something that sounds like wisdom and is wisdom one moment, and then the next moment they're being a total idiot. And no human actually you can find humans that are anywhere along that spectrum. What you won't find is blinking back and forth, and that's what you get with an AI. So here's an example. I'm going to give you some examples. Now you've noticed that when you do a Google search, typically you'll get an AI result first. And so my wife was wondering about what the role of this particular person at Biola is, and I blanked out the name here. So this is an actual screen grab from it. She did a search, so-and-so, William Smith, we'll say, at Biola, and the AI gives an answer. William Smith is the president of Biola University, a private evangelical Christian university in La Mirada, California. He has been in this role since 2020. Smith previously served as the university's senior vice president and provost before becoming president. Smith's background is in Christian education and leadership. Before joining Biola, he worked at other universities, including Western Evangelical Seminary. His leadership at Biola has focused on strengthening the university's commitment to its Christian mission and academic excellence. So that's it seems like a lot of knowledge. It's a more full answer than you would get if you asked any human. The only problem is it's completely wrong. Not a word of truth to this, complete fabrication. So this is a hallucination, an extensive hallucination. Now, you could ask people, who is this person? They might say, well, I don't know. That's what you expect, and this is a key difference between a large language model and a human. A human has self-awareness. Like, if I'm not competent to answer this question, I know usually that I'm not competent, and I'll tell you, well, I think it's this, but I'm not sure. So humans are good at qualifying their knowledge. And AI, because it doesn't have actual knowledge, it's just a trained machine, is notoriously bad at self-assessment. Okay. One person writing in New York Times Magazine put it this way: an AI is like a very smart assistant who has a dozen PhDs, but is also high on ketamine like 30% of the time. You know? Okay, you can't really rely on someone like that. I'm going to show you an example now. It's fun to look at the large language models, but the image generation AI is great for talks, and it's you can see the best and the worst of AI. So I have a colleague, his name is Harvey. This is the picture straight from the Biola website. I didn't actually ask him permission to share this. So he's a great friend, colleague of mine. We tease each other as colleagues. And one of the things I've teased him about is because he wears brown shirt with brown pants, I say he's dressed up like the UPS man. So he was making brisket the other day. This was just a few weeks ago. And so I took this photo of him from the website, and I gave it to Gemini, and I said, I'll show you the prompt. Well, it's right there. Please make a photo of the man in this picture wearing a UPS uniform and smoking brisket. And there you go. Now, I'm telling you, 5 years ago, this looks like a photo. You can't tell the difference between this and an actual photo. This is totally fake. It just took his face, and you even see the UPS truck in the background there. Now, could someone have done this? If I'd given that photo, could someone with Photoshop, it would take days, an expert in Photoshop to do something that looks this good, and now you get it in a minute and a half. It's amazing. And then I took it up a notch. That's good. For a second version, keeping his face the same, can you make him absolutely ripped? Make his six-pack visible underneath. I said him UPS shirt. So I even have a mistake there. It should be his UPS shirt. But it can read through the mistake. I have created a second version with the subject I don't have my glasses here, so I can't read it. So it basically complied, and you get this version of her. Harvey liked this so much, this has become like the photo for our group chat thread. So anyway, maybe I should get my glasses in case I do need to read. Okay, so yesterday, in preparation for today, Gemini, again, here's from your website. Please give me a photo of the church building pictured above, removing the text from the photo, and place farm animals on the lawn. The church building should look exactly as shown. So my intent was, I thought it'll nail this. I'm going to show this, and it'll do it really well, like it did with Harvey. And then I'll show some things that it doesn't do well at all. So it comes back with this. I have created a new photo of the church for you, ensuring that the text is removed while keeping the building exactly as it was. I've also added a selection of farm animals, including sheep, goats, and a cow, grazing on the lawn to complete the scene you described. Okay, this is what I mean by self-awareness. So a human might say, well, I didn't have any stock photos that resemble that, so I've kind of modified the church. It's not a cow, it's like a whole herd of cattle here. You get something that's wacky. But it's one thing for a human to give you something that's not what you asked for and know that it's not what you asked for. The AI doesn't have that kind of knowledge, so it thinks it answers as though it did give you what you asked for, but it didn't at all give me what I asked for. Very interesting. Okay, here's another example, and this was yesterday as well. Please make a picture of 7 snails moving in a line with the 2nd, 5th, and 6th ones wearing little hats. Okay, it's clear. You can imagine it, and you could draw it. And it gives this, adorable photo, and it's extremely powerful that you can get things like this. But in detail, it's wrong, okay? It's not 7 snails, it's 8. It's cute, right? And the wrong ones have hats. So it does some things very well. It does some things very poorly. And it's not the way humans can do, you play basketball, but you're not, a skeet shooter. That's human. It will do things well that usually in humans presuppose you can do the elementary things, and it will flub up the elementary things, but it does the more advanced thing well. So it's very unlike human. So I would put it this way, rather than the ketamine quote, this peculiar amalgam of mastery and confused self-delusion is very unlike the work of any human. In other words, if you work with AIs, the one thing you'll see is it's not human-like. I'm not saying it's not helpful. At its best, it's very helpful. I'm saying you have to watch it in a way that you wouldn't have to watch a human. Okay, made that point. It doesn't look like a human. Then we're going to unpack as I go along that it is profoundly not a human, and what are the profound distinctions between an AI or any algorithm and a human being. So first of all, what is the source of human personhood? Okay, how did we become persons? And if we know that, then we can ask, well, is an AI, is Gemini or ChatGPT, is it a person? Well, we'd have to go back to the source. How did we get our personhood? Okay, big reveal here. It's the book of Genesis. Then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. That's personhood. We are made in the image of God, God in 3 persons. A Godhead who knows personhood because for eternity they experience personhood, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, creates us to have something of that in us, and we are absolutely unique among the living things on planet Earth. So, the evolutionary biologists will say that chimpanzee is our closest living relative. I reject that, but that's what they say. But I just say, go look at chimpanzees and see if you get personhood. You don't. They're wonderful creatures, and dogs are wonderful creatures. I love animals, and they're conscious and they have feelings, okay? But we're going to unpack what is it about us that is categorically different from a dog or a chimpanzee or a dolphin or any of these other wonderfully created creatures. So let me give a simple description of the human person. And this could be unpacked, you could spend a lot of time on this. By God's design, a human being is an eternal and immaterial mind, soul, spirit knit to a physical body. And I think theologians and philosophers will unpack the mind, soul, spirit thing slightly differently. I don't want to labor us with that. The point is, we have a physical body that's made of atoms on the periodic table, but we're not just that. We have this immaterial component to us that is beautifully knit to our physical bodies so that they are made to work together. Our body is made to work with a mind, soul, spirit, and our mind, soul, spirit is made to work with the body. We were not made to be disembodied spirits, right? This is by God's design. It's clear in Scripture. We are not just physical things, and a lot of scientists, the way science went in the direction of materialism starting back in the 17th century, but by the time of Darwin's book in 1859, there was this full-blooded materialistic view of everything, including humanity, that was sort of taking hold of the sciences. And Scripture clearly rejects that view of humanity. This is the words of Jesus. And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. They can't. It's impossible because they don't have access to the soul. Rather, fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. A clear statement that the stuff that we can touch through physical action is not the soul. The soul is not accessible through physical action. Okay? It is not a physical thing. Okay, let's look for a minute at the potency of personhood. What is it possible for us to do because we are persons that would not be possible if we were not persons? And here I want to think about, so let's go back to dogs and chimps. What is it that becomes possible for us to do? What is it that we are that a chimp can't be? And dog is maybe, because most of us don't spend much time with chimps. Raise your hand if you have a dog, though. Okay, dogs are great animals. I love my dog. Sherlock is his name. He's a wonderful dog. And I have a relationship with my dog, okay? But I relate being a person made in God's image in a very different way than my dog relates. Okay, so here is a compare and contrast in very big categories, and we could spend a lot more time on this than we have. Like animals, we humans are made to be embodied. We were not made to be disembodied mind, soul, spirit. I affirm that animals are conscious, and they do have an immaterial component. So my dog is conscious. He does have a mind, but it's not like our mind, because unlike animals, we are made to be spiritual and relational, and a dog is not a spiritual being. A dog does have a consciousness, but he does not have a spiritual being to him. So let me, if I take anger, what I want to show you, convince you of, hopefully, is that we could think of anger on different planes. Can a dog be angry? Yes, a dog can be angry. Can a human be angry? Yes, but there's a different thing. A dog is angry on a different plane than human anger. And the dog doesn't even have access to the plane that describes human anger. So anger on different planes. Let's talk about the carnal plane, and that's where a dog exists. A dog can be agitated and aggressive, okay? It's bothered by something and it acts out. And it's experiencing something, but it's experiencing it in a carnal way. Whereas a human experiences things in a spiritual way. A human can be offended and indignant. There's no such thing as an indignant dog. You can have an angry dog, but it means something different than an angry human. It doesn't have access to this higher plane of spiritual being that we do have access to because we're made in God's image. So if we unpack what that means, you could spend a lot of time on this, but there are categories that are a part of being human human activities that don't exist for a chimp, and they never will. They don't exist for a dog, and they never will. We are contemplative, we are emotional, we are relational, and I'm not denying that there's a lower level carnal version of some of these that a chimp can have, and an elephant can have, and a dog can have, but they can't have the spiritual thing. We are contemplative, we engage in judgment, cognition, insight, inspiration. We are emotional on a spiritual plane. We experience joy, grief, anger. Again, you can find something that a dog experiences, but it's going to be at the carnal plane, not in the spiritual plane. And we are made to be relational. Dogs have friends with dogs, and cats and humans. I'm not denying that, but there's a spiritual dimension of relationality in a human because we are made in God's image. We are made for communication. We are made for empathy. We are made for worship. These are not things that are shared by any other created kind. They're unique to humans. Okay. And because they're unique to human, a dog is actually participating in a life as a conscious thing with a body. And in that respect, a dog is above an AI because an AI is nothing but a machine that can spit out stuff that may or may not be useful. Sometimes it's incredibly useful, sometimes it's useless, based upon how that machine was configured. It's not even like a dog in that it's not aware of anything. It is a machine. Okay, so I want to talk, here I'm going to give you, we're going to talk about the fake danger, and this is something you'll hear being hyped, and I do think it connects with, I do think it's interesting that the people who are hyping that AIs might take over and surpass us are the people who have $1 trillion on the line. And so they know if they make a statement like Elon Musk, I'm afraid of what AI is going to do, then you'll see the stocks rise. And like, it's because some people who don't have the biblical grounding to distinguish the things that we're distinguishing today are thinking, well, if they're really going to take over, I'm going to put my money in that. But it's an odd thing because if they do take over, that's not going to be a good thing. They won't. They will not become like us. So the claim that AIs can become human-like is a false claim. And what I want to do, rather than just assert that, because we could assert that, just say, based on what we saw in Scripture, there's no way that an AI can become us because it wasn't made, we made AI. God made us in His image. We made AI. We don't have the ability to make something in God's image, all right? We just make mechanical things. What I want to do on top of that is to prove to you that we are not merely physical things, okay? And this will get a little bit, I'm not going to use any complex language here, but it will get philosophical in how I'm going to ask you to think about this. And but I'm telling you, I give this to my students, you can show that we are not just physical things. You can demonstrate it. And I'm going to do that. But it will get abstract. And so I'm giving you a warning that if you're scratching your head at the end of this thinking, I think I followed you, but I'm not sure I could go and tell someone else, that's okay. Because I think there's some benefit for you just to see that this exists. You can actually show that we are not, even if at the end you think, I'm not comfortable, arguing with someone on that, that's okay. I want you to see that this exists. And some of you might go, oh, that's very cool. I want to argue, and that's fine too. I'm going to use a method called self-defeating propositions to show this. What I'm going to show you is we cannot be material things. Specifically, I'm going to show you our brains, which are material. Neurons are made of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, all these things on the periodic table. They can't think, okay? And when I say that to a lot of people, they go, what do you mean your brain can't think? I'm saying your brain can't think, and I'm going to show you how we know that's true. I'm going to use self-defeating. I'm going to show that brains think is a self-defeating proposition. What does that mean? Here's an example of a self-defeating proposition. If I say, nothing is certain, what's stupid about that? I acted as though I'm certain about something that denies certainty. So it undercuts itself, okay? Brains think is like that, in that it's self-defeating. And first I want to introduce this principle. It's called the principle the fallacy of self-validation. And it's a simple idea. It makes complete sense, but we are going to get a little philosophical here. It goes like this. If the validity of X, whatever X is in question, then X cannot provide the answer, right? And this makes sense. Like if you're hiring someone and you got a resume from John, but you have some questions about whether John is honest, who can you not ask? John. John, are you honest? Oh, yes. That doesn't help you. That doesn't help you. If the validity of X is in question, then X cannot provide the answer. Now, that has some interesting implications, because if we think about things that we don't usually think about, and this is, philosophers think about things that most people just take for granted. One of the things we just take for granted is that we can think and that thinking is a valid thing. But I'm asking you, if this principle is true, what can you not appeal to show that thinking is valid? Thinking. But oops, if we can't do thinking to show that thinking is valid, then we can't show that thinking is valid. Human thought is an enterprise that we take on faith to be valid. And we're not saying that all human thought is true or that humans always arrive at the truth. We're asking here, is it a complete waste of time for humans to think at all? Is there any hope of getting to something true by thinking? And we hope that that's true. So we take on faith that it's valid for humans to think. It's a valid exercise, but we can't show it because you would have to think to show it, and that's the thing that's in question. Do you get that? So we say, let's just go forward. Let's just hope. So this is a faith position. It's valid for humans to think. And we're not affirming all human thought. We're just saying humans should think, and they should think carefully because something good could come of it. Okay, but we can't prove that. Once we take that to be true on faith, we can do something called science. And by the way, scientists are never trained up on this. So the scientists say, if it's not shown by science, it's not true. They have never learned how you think about this. Science is another thing like this. For us to do science, it has to be true that we can think, but it also has to be true that this apparent external world, everything that's external to me, has to actually have its actual existence independent of me. So it's an objective reality that's out there so that I can study how it works. It's got consistency to it and objectivity. I can describe equations that show how something works. I can give them to you. You can go and do your observations and they marry up. That's what science is. But guess what? If we say, is the whole enterprise valid? You can't do science to validate science. You just have to trust that it's valid, right? So think of it this way. Remember the movie Matrix, where like your entire experience is fabricated? If that were true, you can't do science. If something is monkeying with our experience, then you can't do science. We're trusting on faith that that's not the case, that there's something reliable, and in our case as theists, as Christians, God made this and he made us and he put us here to do things like science, and that's why we think this is valid. But it is a faith position. So once you've taken these things to be true on faith, scientists go about trying to come up with explanations of the natural world. I want you to consider one such explanation. Suppose scientists go about doing their thing and they're publishing papers and they write books, and something that they come up with, a scientific conclusion becomes so standard and widely accepted that it becomes part of textbook orthodoxy, so that high school students are being taught that this is true when they take AP biology, and it's just taken to be textbook orthodoxy. But suppose one of those explanations, if you do take it to be true, has implications for our starting point, these faith positions, that human thought is valid. And suppose the implication is, oops, if that's true, then it isn't valid. Then that goes, and that goes, and that goes, right? That would be a self-defeating proposition. A proposition that if you took it to be true, undercuts the entire program and therefore can't be true. I'm going to show you that brains think is this, okay? So imagine yourself in a futuristic brain imaging laboratory that has equipment that doesn't exist today and may never exist. We'll imagine it to be you're fully conscious, fully aware, in a seat. There are scientists around you who all think that this is a purely material world. There is nothing but physics. They believe that. They're called materialists, physicalists. And they are imaging in real time everything that's happening in your head, in your brain, to any resolution they want, down to the atomic resolution. And they are insisting that thought is a physical process that is nothing more than the operation of the neurons in your brain. And they're asking you to do, for part of this experiment, they're saying, count to 10, and we want you to think about numbers and count to 10. And you say, okay, 1, 2, and they say, stop right there. When you said 2, we captured this image of activation in your frontal lobe. Is that what you mean when you say 2? And you say, no. You say, I'm glad my frontal lobe is doing what it's doing, but that's not what I mean when I say 2. They say, well, wait a minute, let's zero in here. This particular synapse between two neurons fired when you said 2. Is that what you mean when you say 2? And you go, I'm not denying the synapse fired. I'm glad my synapses are firing. That's not what I mean when I say 2. And they start to get upset with you now. Why do they get upset? Because in a material world, if there is nothing but atoms and molecules, the stuff on the periodic table, then if 2 is anything, it's got to be made of atoms because there's nothing but physical stuff. And you're thinking, well, no, I have an idea that's 2. There's a concept that's 2, and it isn't on the periodic table. And there isn't any picture you can show me of anything happening in my brain that I will say, yes, that's what I mean when I say 2, because it isn't a physical thing. And yet I'm thinking about it when I say 2. And the materialists get upset with you and say, you must be crazy because this is a material world. There isn't anything that isn't physical, and you're insisting that everything physical that we show you is not what you mean when you use this word. Do you see where this leads us? You need to stick to your guns. Because if I follow the materialists by doubting my conscious experience, because they're saying you're confused. Okay, you're using these words and you're confused because you think it means something that doesn't exist. If I follow the materialists by doubting my conscious experience, I'm forced to doubt absolutely everything. Why? Because I don't have access to anything except through my conscious experience. Do you see that? If the materialist view forces you to accept that you are fundamentally confused, you're using words that you think connect to something that's not there, then you are deeply confused indeed. And thought is delusional. So you're left with this option. Either, and this is the preferable option, either I am manipulating concepts which are not physical. They live in a different world. Concepts when I think, or I am being manipulated by neurons into thinking that I get the impression that I'm manipulating concepts, but I'm not. These are the two options. The scientists are proposing B, and you're saying, no, it has to be A. But do you see what happens if you go down the route of B? Manipulating is a positive thing in A. I am working with concepts. I'm fashioning concepts. Manipulated is a negative thing in B. I am being duped, tricked, deceived. If I am being tricked, deceived, then I lose the whole thing. I can't think. Human thought is not valid if we're fundamentally deceived. And that means science goes, there are no brains, there are no neurons, you don't exist. All of this is just a load of delusion, right? Including the claim that brains think, right? So it ends up, you have to affirm A over B because B is self-contradictory. It's incoherent. So, yes, concepts exist. No, they're not physical. Yes, I am working with them. Yes, my brain is physical. That means my brain is not actually working with concepts. My brain is an organ that operates in service of my mind, and my mind does work with concepts. I am manipulating concepts. We're left with a view of humans that looks like this. There is a material realm, physical realm. We do have these marvelously designed bodies that are physical, and all of biology and human anatomy and physiology, biochemistry studies the physical aspect of a human body. But we are not just bodies. We have immaterial mind, soul, spirit that is in a different realm. It is not in the physical realm, and yet they're connected somehow, right? Because I come up with ideas like raising my hand. That's something I thought. My physical hand goes up. It only does that because somebody knows my thoughts before I think them and is in charge of the physical world, including my brain. And when I think this, he knows I'm thinking it, and he presses that appropriately into the motor cortex, and the brain activates, and it pushes signals down the spinal cord, and my muscles react, and my hand goes up. Going the other way, I see the light from outside, out there. Photons are impinging on my retina. This is all physical stuff. Photons are impinging on my retina. It gets focused by the lens to an image on the retina. The rods and cones are being activated by light photons landing on these cells. They produce a signal that goes through the optic nerve, goes to the visual processing center of the brain. All of this is physics, including the processing that the brain does. It's not light. It's not white, okay? It's not red, white, green. That doesn't appear. That's not a physical thing. Where is red in physics? It doesn't exist. Red exists up there. So someone, guess who, is operating all of this physical stuff, and at the appropriate moment when your brain has done physical stuff, calculation, and has signals ready for it to be translated into a mental conscious experience, red, light, white. Then it becomes a mental experience, a conscious experience for me. So we are marvelous creatures. And the fact that this is real, this is us, means there's no way that a machine, which doesn't participate at all in that upper sphere, is going to become us or like us. They can do churning out physical results that might look like a human did them because it's been trained on human activity. It will never become us because it's fundamentally operating in a different way. Okay, that leads to the real danger. The real danger is that when machines become highly capable, and without doubt, despite the goofs and the epic fails that you can find with AI, it is very capable, and you can do a lot with AI, and you will be seeing more of that, doubtless, in the coming years. It is not us and is not like us. The real danger is that humans who are persons allow themselves to become dependent on machines in a way that causes us to shrink back from who we are and what we were made to be. And you hear stories of this. People who are desperate for a relationship and they find it hard to relate with other humans, and we all experience that at times. And they find that an AI is easier to relate to than a human, and they develop a pseudo relationship with an AI rather than with a human. In taking steps like this, and that's an extreme case, and we've heard about extreme cases, but it's going to become more and more common and more tempting for less extreme versions of being lazy about exercising what we are as persons because we can get an AI to fill in. I want to show you diagrammatically, going back to this simple diagram of what a human is. Even a trivial example of communication looks like this between two humans. So a human on the left has an idea. Oh, I want to ask her if she did the statistics homework. Simple idea, everyday idea. It's an idea that lives up here. It gets pushed into the brain, and some sort of action, either typing a text or speaking with the mouth. Physical stuff conveys this message to another human who receives it. It gets processed in the brain and then becomes a conscious thing, and it becomes interpreted. This is how humans converse and relate. It's two mind, soul, spirits connected through the physical structure of the universe that God designed for us to live and move and have our being. See how different that is. Even if this is not an interesting conversation, philosophically, what's happening here is profound because two spirits are connecting. That's profound. Compare that to this. The chatbot isn't that. It isn't a person. It doesn't have access to this spirit concept realm. You can ask the question of the chatbot, it cranks through, the machine cranks, and something comes out from the machine. But nothing ever understood you. Nothing ever connected with you. There was no meeting of the minds, because there is no mind on the other side of that. Okay, I will stop there, and I don't know what's next. Or should I take questions?
Yes.
Okay, I'll take.
Hi, you know that picture of your friend in the UPS uniform?
Yeah.
Actually, not
Do
that
you know
one.
him? No.
The snail one that's like emblazoned in my mind. But the snail one with the hats.
Yeah.
Was the snail picture already existing somewhere on the internet, and then it was just modified with the hat?
No, it's actually more remarkable than this. And I've spent quite a bit of time understanding large language models. I was telling Gordon, I started to spend some time trying to figure out diffusion models and denoising. There's some key, like that paper from Google was like a key breakthrough in large language models. There's other papers that were key breakthroughs, because if you go back to 2022, 2023, the images you were getting from AIs were just horrible looking, crude. But they're now like a photograph. So it is not, what is the case is there are lots and lots and lots of photographs that are sort of nature, tundra images like that, where there's sticks, forest floor. There's millions of those. There's lots of pictures of snails. There's lots of pictures of hats. The clever thing is these AIs are now pretty good at pulling together the hat pictures, the forest picture, the snail picture, to create combinations that nobody ever did this photo. So it isn't just giving you something that exists. The way like a Google Images search used to do, you say, give me pictures of snails wearing hats. It might say, don't have very many of those actually. So it is doing something remarkable, but it is also flubbing up something very, very rudimentary and elementary. It can't even get the right number of snails. You might get this right, but I give the assignments to my students where they're required to go off to an AI and get it to fail and turn in the failure. And we spend a whole day going over these. And they're very bad. The image generation is very bad at getting numbers right, counting right. And one of the prompts was, a girl turned this in, she said, give me a picture of a fat guy eating 6 hot dogs at once. And it gave 2 attempts at it. It looks like a person, but there's never 6 hot dogs, and one of the persons has 3 arms. It can't get numbers right. So it's doing something clever in that it's putting things together that there is no example of this, presumably, in the world of photography. But it's also strangely messing up relatively simple things. Yeah. No, so I mean, what you could do, I had actually a long conversation with an AI when I said, give me a simple drawing of 8 snails in a row wearing hats like this. And it did sort of like a Richard Scarry style figure. And again, I said 7 and it gave me 8, or I said 8 and it gave me 9. And I said, how many snails are there in the picture? I think I said, give me 8. It gave me 9. I said, how many snails are there? It said 8. I said, are you sure? It said, yes, I counted them. And then I went through this long process of, how do you know they're 8? And I said, what would you conclude if I tell you you're wrong? Well, it must be that it's an ambiguous image or something. But you gave me, I spent a lot of time on it. And it could not get it right. And then said, would you like me to analyze the picture I gave you? Yes, please do. It drew boxes around. It actually gave the snails in 2 lines, and it drew a box around the top line and the bottom line and said, I was wrong, there are 2 snails. It was absolutely hopeless. So I am of the opinion that the fundamental, let's face it, if you can't actually think, you're handicapped when it comes to thought. Okay, like you can't do it. That's a pretty big, and an AI can't actually think. I am of the opinion that we are forever, when we're trying to get machines to act like they're thinking and they can't, you're forever going to be stuck with these things where it just can't do it because you're asking something that can't think to think. So we'll get some things that get patched up, and what happens, I think, with a lot of these is when the big companies become aware it's bad at this. Like, you used to be able to ask it how many letter R examples are there in this word, and if the R's were separated, like forever, it would miscount them. Well, they can correct that by saying, if someone asks this, we'll just use this code to do it right. So it's no longer the large language model. You can do a lot of patching like that, but you'll be forever patching and there will always be holes. That's my opinion. Okay. Young man here, and then, you can pick him.
Would you consider transhumanism like under the false danger of AI will be like us, or like real danger of the personhood atrophy?
I think the first is not a danger. Humans will not be like us. Now, in transhumanism, you've got this unhealthy desire to make sort of a combination of human and machine. I think there is no danger of machines ever being like us. If you think about this, it's actually blasphemous, because the creator is always over the created, okay? We will never be God. Why? God created us. We created AI. AI will never be us. So to say that AI will be us or better is like saying we can become better than God. It's just not going to happen. It's fundamentally impossible. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question as it relates over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got the bright light.
Yeah, you said extremes. You know, extremes, people have relationships with extremes, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to something extreme here. In Christianity,
yeah.
Could you see, or could there be a possibility that AI could be involved in discipleship?
If someone can, want to marry an AI, then someone could see themselves as being discipled by an AI. We could just say, can a book disciple you? And we could have a book, and there have been lots of them written on discipleship that have a huge amount of wisdom about discipleship. But if by discipleship we mean a connection between 2 mind, soul, spirits who love the Lord, and one is trying to pour into the other, then no, an AI will never do that. If by discipleship we mean someone getting the feeling that they're being discipled, you could get that from a book, you could get that from a podcast, you could get that from YouTube, you could get that from an AI, but it won't be the real thing.
We have time for one more question.
Yeah, I have a question here.
Who's there? Okay.
My question is, as a landscape architect, I was trained in architectural design and construction engineering. I want to know, if the AI can understand symbolism, the symbolism behind colors, shapes, and forms, and ideology.
If we could get the young man to have the last question too, I just don't, because his hand was up early. So this guy right here. A symbol properly understood is like it's the connection between a token, a physical instance of something that refers to something else, that refers to something conceptual. And so language is symbolism. We use these physical things, like I can put ink on paper, that's physical, but it is a word in English. You read the word, and then you go up to this concept world and know what I mean by that world. So in that sense, AIs are not capable of symbolic manipulation. They are capable of crunching tokens, so anything you can do with computers can be done, but a computer is not accessing actual concept. So it's not making a conceptual connection. What's happening with an AI, if you have a conversation with ChatGPT, you're thinking something, you type in a prompt, it crunches through the machine, it comes back physical text on your laptop computer. It doesn't become an idea until you read that text and you say, oh, in English that means this. Now you came up with the idea, and you'll attribute it to the thing that didn't even have the idea. It's not capable of having an idea. It's capable of stringing words together, right? But when those words come back to you, you go, oh, it means this. Well, you have an idea that you generated because text and your understanding of language connects to that idea. The bot didn't actually have that idea. Yeah. Okay, last question.
From what I've heard from your lecture, it sounds like it's a mistake to call it artificial intelligence. Is there a different name, title you would give it?
You know what? That's an interesting thing because there's spin on this. I'm happy with artificial intelligence if the emphasis is on artificial, not real. But you'll also hear it called machine intelligence. So I think a lot of people who are working in AI think of that term as meaning this is actual intelligence that was made by humans, not human intelligence. So the spin is this is every bit as much intelligence as our intelligence is. It's just that we made it. So kind of like an artificial knee is a replacement for a natural knee. So they would say natural intelligence is what humans have, and artificial intelligence is not inferior, it's just that we made it. And I say that's a wrong way to think about it. If you say artificial means it's not real, artificial vanilla, it's not real, then I'm happy with it. Do you get the difference? Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Let's thank Doug for his talk. Can you leave your laptop up there just for 1 second?
Oh, yeah.